How's it going?
Life is good, I have to say. I've been feeling really content. Um, but it's an interesting thing, when I learned from IRES, integrative restoration, that joy is just a changing sensation as well as everything else. I remember that was such a huge thing for me because through life, for some reason, it always felt like the message I was getting was that we need to be happy. Like you need to be happy. Everything, you always need to be whatever good means. You always need to be nice. You always need to be happy. And this realization that joy, and I think that was one of the sort of the last sort of big things from the IREST, because it's one of the later koshas, one of the layers or sheaths that we talk about. It's such an interesting thing that people, it makes sense that it's a later on sheath because there is this preference, I think, often for joy and to be happy. And, people miss out, like we've talked before, about how there's that whole beautiful rainbow of emotions and of feelings. And there's both sides, both sides are always there. So, with joy, maybe the opposite might be grief. And I'm really grateful for grief. I've had to grieve, the loss of my hair with alopecia areata. It wasn't a joyful experience, right? And I've had to grieve the loss of my father, and that took a long time as well. But I'm grateful to be able to feel those feelings because they're natural. So, speaking about joy, it's this interesting sort of discussion because our life is all you read all the books that say that we're supposed to be happy all the time. I don't know how you find that in your life.
There certainly is a lot of people wanting joy and happiness, right? And why wouldn't they? It's of course it's nice to be joyful. But you're right in that sometimes we might give the wrong idea in that joy is better than other emotions, so that we need to be in joy and the other emotions are stopping us from feeling joy. And then we start having these um, sort of relationships with emotions that we perceive as good or bad, or that, oh, I can't feel joy until this emotion is no longer present, or I can't feel joy until my situation changes. Um, and so all that, oh, I'm failing in life because I'm not joyful, or that I'm sad and I shouldn't be sad and I need to get out of sadness. And so I think that in that sense, when we believe that joy is the place where we need to be, it it actually prevents us from living life fully because we're not allowing ourselves to experience other emotions that are just as important as joy. And I think we talked about it in another episode around emotions, is that when we limit our experience in one emotion, we limit the experience of its opposite. And so it's so funny how we're in a society that a lot of people are uncomfortable with other people's sadness or grief. That isn't it so that when we oftentimes see someone in pain, all we want to do is get them out of pain. We want to cheer them up, right? It's even in our culture. Oh, let's this person's sad. Let's cheer this person up, or and not saying that that's a bad thing, but sometimes the person just needs to feel what's present, right? And when we don't allow or give ourselves the time and space to feel into those things because we feel like we shouldn't be there, and the people around us is not allowing us to be there because they're trying to get us out of what they perceive as a suffering, we learn not to be with emotions that we that is the opposite of joy, let's say. Um, but then in doing that, we limit our experience of joy itself, which is kind of ironic. And so, yeah, I think with joy, joy can be present. This is what the IRES teaching is teaching us, is that joy is present all the time. There is a kind of joy that's relative to our situations and circumstances, and we can have that kind of joy for sure. We can be happy when something nice happens to us, or when someone is kind to us, or we have a beautiful experience. We can find joy in many things. But then there's also the absolute joy, that joy that's already here, that's independent of our external circumstances. And that joy can be here even as we are experiencing the opposite of joy, even grief, even sadness. And that doesn't mean that when those emotions are there, that joy is absent. And so when we start to um, see joy in this sense, and there's less grasping, there's less fear around, oh, I can't feel into this emotion or that because it takes my joy away. Actually, your joy is always here, right? But we don't have an understanding that joy is already here.
You bring up a lot of like good discussion. It reminds me during one of the practices, we do various levels of trainings for integrative restoration. And I remember, as people were being vulnerable, um, exactly what you just said. Like it was the first time doing a co-meditation dyad and, doing a guided meditation with someone that you don't know at all, revealing, such vulnerable things to you. And then maybe these strong emotions appear. And I remember the first time that ever happened to me, I really didn't know what to do because it was just all very sudden, you know? And a powerful thing was when the senior teachers, they stepped in and they demonstrated, they role modeled, you don't need to give them a napkin. You don't have to put a napkin in their hand. You can offer them, but they might be going through some big catharsis. It might take them away from what they're feeling. They might be feeling joyful in being able to finally uh, feel these big emotions. So recognizing that we have our own perceptions of things, whatever they're sharing might be very upsetting for us, but it might not be their experience. So I really appreciate in our training that we're taught and it's role modeled how to hold space for somebody for whatever is arising. And I love that third column that they would, point towards when you were doing a co-meditation dyad, to put in, whatever is arising as we're holding space for somebody else. And I remember it was really full when I used to start offering co-meditation dyads to other people, holding space for them and putting like hearts or I want to cry, because for me growing up, I was very sensitive. I was always a sensitive child, and I had a lot of empathy. And watching movies, even now, I have to say, I can often feel, even if it's like a little cartoon animal that's suffering, I can sometimes really get caught up in it. But iRest has really taught me how to hold space for it all. It's not about me, when I'm holding space for someone else, especially as a like working with a client or working with someone else who's sharing and being vulnerable. I that's not the right time for me to start feeling vulnerable and opening up all my my triggers and traumas. So I really appreciate the practice for letting us be able to hold space for whatever is arising, including the joy that might look a little bit different than what we feel joy should look like.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of assumptions when it comes to feelings, emotions, and all of that. And depending on our own upbringing and our conditioning, we might feel like, oh, this person must be suffering, or this person is having a bad time. Um, I think that we don't really trust ourselves in the way we feel anymore. And when we, out of good intentions and love, and we sit with another and we see them suffering, and all we try to do is get them out of it or prevent them from feeling, then kind of the other person also learns that, oh, it's not okay for me to be here. Like, this is not good for me. I need to get out of it as well. And so it becomes like a vicious cycle. Like, we create more people who are not able to sit with discomfort, and then the people who are suffering are learning that it's not okay to sit with discomfort. So then everyone's trying to get out of feeling discomfort. And then the emotions that are showing up as messengers, even though they might be perceived as negative, never gets processed. And emotions that are not processed, they don't move through, they stay in our bodies. And then so we're going to have to keep coming back to them again and again and again. And and we don't know why that, oh my gosh, why is this emotion coming up again? Or that I'm always so sad, or this is the theme of my life. And it may not be. It might just be emotions trying to move through, and it's just getting stuck because we're not actually allowing ourselves to move them through. Um, and then oftentimes, maybe like you said, the assumption that that person is suffering may not be true. Maybe you're suffering watching them, going through a certain thing, and that in you trying to cheer them up or move them out of that place is more for you because you feel uncomfortable witnessing it. Right. And so that's also really interesting for us to start to recognize that, hey, is it me or is it them? Maybe they're okay. Am I just assuming that they're not okay? And even if they are sad, doesn't mean that they're not okay. Right. And so how can we start to create a space, a safe container to hold a safe container for the people that we're working with, to let them know that, hey, it's actually okay. It's okay to have these emotions because we're human and we feel. And that, and through the process of integrative restoration or IREST, we teach our students how to feel into emotions in a way that feels safe for them, right? And we learn to feel into our emotions without being identified with them, without feeling that, oh, I'm fused to this emotion. We learn to take a different perspective, and we learn to witness them while all the while still staying connected in that experience. And so I think that this is such a valuable skill and resource that can be very simple. Like, it's not a complicated method that you need to learn in order for you to navigate your emotions. Um, but we certainly need to, I feel, just to shift the perspective and the narrative around how emotions show up for us, and in doing so, when we're able to see emotions as messengers, then we might even be able to experience joy as we feel into the different emotions, because we start to see the beauty in all the messages that are coming up, because then we appreciate and we might even welcome the different messages that come up for us, pointing us back to our essential nature. And when we recognize that, that can be a very joyful moment as well, for us to appreciate that, wow, everything brings me back to myself.
And I think it
Yeah.
also helps with recognizing joy with others, so as we feel that joy within ourselves, it's an interesting thing because sometimes people feel like, oh, I shouldn't share the success that's happening, or something great that's happening with me because my friend's having a challenging time, or you know but as we all realize that we, in experiencing joy for ourselves and then maybe opening up space so that people feel comfortable to share the joys with us, it actually goes back and forth, that resonance. So being able to feel this beautiful thought for someone else who's doing well in life, and being able to share in that joy, it actually fills both of us up. And then I also do love how in the practice, we take a moment maybe towards, before, like near the end, where we just take a moment. Is there joy maybe arising at this moment? Is there a joy that's coming from the heart, or this inner smile? And I love how that kind of just is this reminder of this joy that's, not reliant on anything else, that just might be there for joy itself. So that's a beautiful practice.
Yeah. And I think that as a tip or a practice that our listeners might take on, that perhaps think about or create your own joy for yourself. So instead of waiting for something to happen that you can be joyful about, which is another conditioned belief that we have, that we need to have a reason to be happy, we actually don't. um, but as people who are just finding this practice, it might be useful to maybe bring to mind a memory of something that brought you joy. And notice that as you bring this memory to mind, how you feel the joy in your body. Do you feel it in your heart? And you mentioned that um, the analogy of an inner smile. Maybe you feel that inner smile from your heart radiating all the way out into your limbs, your head, your neck, your whole body, just feeling this sensation of joy. And then allow yourself to be there. Sit in this joy, this sensation of joy for as long as it feels good. And then even let go of the memory that brought you there and just really stay with the sensation of joy. And then in that moment you realize that you're just feeling joyful for no reason at all. Right. And that you can come back to this joy anytime you want without any reason at all. And so when we start to cultivate a practice like so, you start to realize that actually I don't need my circumstance to be a certain way. I can be in a really tough spot right now, but that doesn't mean that joy is not something that I'm allowed. It's not that I don't have access to joy. You always can have access to joy. And so this practice is a beautiful way for us to, as a reminder that actually I can feel into joy whenever I want. Isn't that wonderful?
I was just going to add, like you said, as people are practicing this, so using a memory and maybe even using like gratitude. The gratitude practice might be a lovely way as well. If you can't think of a memory at that moment, maybe even just notice what you might be grateful for, even the smallest thing, someone remembering you or holding open a door, and as that practice grows and grows and grows, you might feel that joy just in the smallest things. And then, like you said, letting it go and just feeling joy itself. So it might be different ways for people to access joy, and just let us know, what's working for you, maybe a memory, maybe being grateful for whatever's arising. And, we're just so grateful that you're listening to our episodes. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.